Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Lee. I'm an associate professor from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. On behalf of the ARHP Research Committee, I would like to welcome all of you to join us at our first webinar, Mentoring to Success, How to Find a Good Mentor. Now, this session is going to be divided into two parts. In the first 30 minutes, we're going to have presentations from 3 outstanding mentors for clinician scientists. And then we'll have 30 minutes for questions and answers. Now, during the presentation, you're welcome to type your questions in the comment box that you can see on your GoToMeeting screen. We will monitor the questions and then post them to the speakers at the question and answer period. And then we will open up the floor for discussion if time allows. Now, this session will be recorded and will be made available to all ARHP members. So I would like to remind everyone to mute your phone in order to avoid any interference to the recording. Now, what I'd like to do is to introduce our 3 speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Basia Belza. Dr. Belza is an Aljoa endowed professor in aging, as well as a professor in the Department of Biobehavioral Nursing and Health Systems from University of Washington. Dr. Belza has mentored undergraduate and graduate students through teaching, academic advisement, and chairing and serving on thesis and doctoral committees. Our second speaker is Dr. Joan Rogers, professor and chair from the Department of Occupational Therapy and Associate Dean of Graduate Studies from the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences from the University of Pittsburgh. Our final speaker is Dr. Carol Oatis, professor from the Department of Physical Therapy at the Arcadia University. She's also the past president of ARHP, as many of you know. In 2002, Dr. Oatis was named the recipient of the ARHP Master Educator Award. The order of the presentation will start with Dr. Belza, then Dr. Rogers, and finally Dr. Oatis. And now I would like to invite Dr. Belza to start after I pass the presentation to her.
Thank you very much, Linda. Welcome all to our webinar this morning. I'm really glad you could join us. I have the opportunity to talk about the characteristics of good mentors, and I will move forward with my first slide here. And here's my conflict of interest. And then, again, my primary objective is to describe characteristics of good mentors. So it was fun actually preparing for this webinar, because in going through some information about mentors and mentoring, I was reminded about how this word came about. And for all those of us who have to go back to our history from high school, is the historical derivation of the word mentor is actually from the character in Homer's The Odyssey. And the Odyssey, if you recall, is a story about Odysseus and his adventures during his return home from the Trojan War. But while he was gone, he entrusted his kingdom as well as his son to the wise mentor. And because of the mentor's wisdom and regard, the goddess of Athena chose to take on his persona while giving the son guidance that would later alter his life. So the mentor really has been adopted in English then as a term meaning someone who imparts wisdom to and also shares knowledge with a less experienced colleague. So it was nice as I was thinking about this whole relationship we have, both being mentored as well as receiving mentoring, what the origin of this term was. So here I just wanted to remind us all that, in fact, if we aren't mentored, it's actually rather risky. And it's similar to risky behaviors like not wearing a seatbelt, smoking, or excessive drinking. And the risks is because the studies really indicate that those who receive effective mentoring actually show greater positive outcomes in a number of areas. And much of the research I found was actually related to individuals in graduate education, but I think it's really transferable to those of us in our career. So again, if we aren't being mentored, it is a risk. And let me share with you some of the things that research has shown that mentoring actually really helps us with. And these are the three areas: productivity, academic success, and professional success. So really, mentoring allows increased productivity as far as our presentations, publications, as well as our own ability and our ability to write grants. It also helps with academic success as far as persisting in our graduate school or our subsequent roles. And actually, the research shows for those people actually in doctoral programs, there's a shorter time to degree success for someone that's mentored, as well as better academic coursework. And last of all, there is increased professional success, and this is in securing jobs that one would be interested in obtaining, whether it be in academic or whether it be in leadership positions outside of the university. So as we think about this whole concept of mentoring, it's really more than just an academic advisor. An academic advisor, at least in the academic institutions I've been in, are typically more assigned to us versus something that we select on our own. And it's more than just a supervisor who may be doing performance evaluations or doing some oversight of our work. But a mentor really does provide you with wisdom, technical knowledge, assistance, support, empathy, and really importantly, respect. And frequently, we find that effective mentoring relationships actually develop over time. So it's really important that we persist, but that we're also patient with developing these relationships. One of the things that I think is important as far as starting, and this is something that I think we can all go back to as we're looking for new mentors in our life, is really looking at developing a vision of the kind of mentoring that you desire. So first of all, what kind of mentoring have you received in the past? How would you describe your mentoring relationships? They've been collegial, or they've been more like an apprenticeship? And what do you actually prefer now as far as your own professional development? What did you find most helpful or least helpful with mentoring that you've received in the past? And what kind of mentoring did you not receive earlier that you think would be particularly helpful to you now? So I think our ability to find a good mentor really starts first with us asking these questions. What have you received in the past? What did you like? What would you like differently? And what do you need now to help you move forward in your professional development? So here there are, I think, three key areas when we look at characteristics of mentors. There is the approach to facilitation, there is professional expertise, and there is personal style. And I think each of these are important when we look at our mentor relationship. So his approach to facilitation is really, how does the individual we're looking at to mentor us approach facilitating? Do they actually give a lot of feedback that's constructive, or do they only give you positive strokes? How do they facilitate the growth? Do they expect you to come prepared, or do they share preparation for meetings collectively with you? Professional expertise. I think this is important. Many of us in rheumatology may not be in areas where there are a lot of people close to us who have that expertise, but we may seek other expertise than just that in rheumatology. So we might seek someone for their grant writing expertise. We might seek someone who has expertise as far as community partners go. So there's a number of different ways to look at what kind of professional expertise we want. And then personal style. Is someone really warm? Are they professional? Are they inviting? Are they organized? Are they focused on time or more lax? And it's not so much whether these are good or bad, but what are these a good match with what you're particularly interested in? And so this next slide actually has to do with this wonderful word cloud that I found. And it does remind me of all the benefits that we have from both mentoring and being mentored. And I wanted to call your attention to one particular word in the bottom left-hand side. And it's this whole piece about repaying. So we've been mentored, we're looking for new mentors, but the fact that we can also continually mentor other people is really important. And so my last slide actually has to do with this whole concept of really paint it forward. That as we are mentored, it's good for us to think about mentoring the next generation too. And so I did have a couple of references. I found a number of them on different academic sites. There's one in particular that I really like at the University of Washington, and it's listed here. Although it's, again, focused on students, I think it has a lot of relevance to us as professionals. And the other thing that I was really enjoying was listening to a number of TED Talks on mentoring. And again, I would call your attention to the TED Talk website in order to look at different talks that deal with mentoring, as well as the whole concept of paying it forward. So both being mentored as well as mentoring. So that concludes my part of the presentation. And now it's my pleasure then to stop showing my screen and turn it over to Joan, who will be giving the next part of our presentation.
Okay, so now that we have an appreciation of the desirable qualities to look for in a mentor, I want to turn to the question of what can mentees expect from a good mentor. So here are my disclosure statements. And the objective is to discuss what mentees can expect from good mentors. I'm going to focus on 5 key expectations. First, good mentors immerse their mentees in their research environment. You're introduced to the research team, the research laboratory routines, the equipment, the opportunities that are available to support your career development. You become socialized, as it were, to the life of the laboratory, through which you will learn how science is conducted on a day-to-day basis versus how it's conducted in the textbook, so to speak. Typically, there is a series of meetings, each with a different purpose, that you are expected to attend and contribute to. So there may be research planning meetings, which focus on the overall status and direction of ongoing projects in the laboratory, so that this gives all lab participants informed about the activity of the lab and the individual's key responsibilities in the lab. There may be journal clubs which focus on reading and critiquing, perhaps recently published studies or classic studies. There may be on a specific theme, or they may even take into account popular science. There are also informal meetings with visiting scholars, and these may have a targeted agenda or be open-ended question and answer. There may be career development topics, such as preparing for a career development award or how to build your curriculum vitae. And perhaps even there may be a Friday afternoon social hour. Immersion in the research environment allows you to learn through observation, imitation, impromptu lectures, trial and error, and even sidebar conversation, so to speak. This learning is critical to your development, as your one-on-one meetings with your mentor. Typically, labs provide exposure to individuals in various career stages. Thus, a peer mentoring system develops with novice investigators assisted by those who are more skilled. A well-structured research environment in which trainees learn from each other as well as the mentor is a labor-saving teaching mechanism typically put into place by effective mentors, and you are expected to take advantage of it. It's an efficient mechanism for being socialized to the role of a scientist. Secondly, good mentors assist their mentees to develop the skills needed for a successful research academic career. This skill development may include mastering things like refining your clinical or laboratory skills, which may support your research trajectory. For example, learning how to read MRI reports, writing research articles, or perhaps I should say learning the role of rewriting in writing research articles, preparing grant applications, including understanding the purposes of different scientific agencies, NIH, NIDR, PCORI, NSF, etc., and how these purposes are manifested in their grant formats. Responding to an unfavorable review of a manuscript or grant application, writing peer reviews of articles or grants, speaking at professional conferences, asking good questions of visiting professors and conference speakers, especially those you want to get to know you, and communicating with grant administrators. The research environment of an effective mentor will provide repetitive, hands-on practice of these and other such skills. Effective mentors provide honest, constructive, corrective criticism of your work and of the rate at which you are making progress. Much of your growth as a mentee depends on your ability to respond positively to this criticism. Positively emotionally, that is an understanding that the target of criticism is your work and not you, and positively instrumentally, that is an understanding that criticism is a teaching technique, the aim of which is to make the product better. Skill development also includes learning the politics associated with an academic career. It may be unlikely that a meeting will be called to tell you how to manage a conflict about authorship, but issues like this will be discussed in the corridors, and they can be approached in your one-on-one meetings with your mentor. Third, good mentors provide career advice. They take a long-term view of research career development. Mentors are instrumental in helping mentees stay on the track, which is particularly important in the early stages of one's career, when you may experience more of the angst associated than the pleasure associated with science. When running for a responsible office in your professional organization may be attractive to your leadership goals, a good mentor will remind you that every minute you spend organizing the business of the organization subtracts from the time you have from thinking, writing, and rewriting. A good mentor helps you sort through conflicting priorities. Similarly, a good mentor will be invaluable in helping you assess the fit between your career aspirations and the mission and resources in your department or at the various institutions that you may apply to. Because research is still relatively new in the rheumatology health professions, many academic units lack experience in facilitating research careers. Hence, assessing the fit is critical if mentors are to receive a return on their investment and if mentees are to be successful. So the good news is that there is a critical shortage of research-qualified faculty in our professions. The bad news is that institutions may lack experience in early career development. Thus, it is important to have a mentor who can assist one to strategize about how to garner needed time and resources. Fourth, good mentors assist their mentees to develop a network of useful contacts. In science, as in the professions, who you know and who knows you is as significant to your career advancement as what you know. Effective mentors open doors by marketing their mentees to key people, key in their specific research area, in granting agencies, in the professions. Having invested considerable effort into their mentees, good mentors are proud of them, and that pride comes through in talking up their research, writing references that are convincing and highly laudatory, and as mentoring is often a long-term relationship, recommending them for positions on grant review panels and editorial boards and the like. The last thing I'll consider is social support. Good mentors provide social support. As role models of scientists, they demonstrate behaviors, attitudes, and values appropriate to science. They provide a vision of the trajectory of a career scientist for their mentees, along with its ups and downs, its influence on work-life balance, and the coping strategies that help to relieve stress. They provide inspiration, encouragement, and advice. They celebrate your successes with you. Failure, for example, in getting an article accepted or a grant funded is a joint event. We did not make it this time, but we can try again. Having considered the role and associated tasks of good mentors, I now flip the question and ask, what do mentors look for in a mentee? That is, what constitutes a good mentee? The absolutely essential characteristic that I would name would be a passion for science. Mentees who are highly motivated to learn from the mentor, who value the mentor's expertise, but at the same time are anxious to develop their own niche related to the mentor's expertise so that science will be extended in that area. One of our senior scientists often speaks of having a fire in your belly, a burning desire to investigate a phenomenon that is unknown, to understand that which is not currently understood. The reason I name passion as the essential characteristic is because when mentees are passionate about their work, they're eager to learn the needed knowledge and skills, they show initiative, they respond positively to corrective feedback, they persist in the face of ambiguity and continue to be motivated when things do not go according to plan, and they are open to challenge and risk-taking. The second characteristic I would name is goal-directedness. Good mentees know what they need to learn. They have conducted a thorough self-evaluation of their strengths and weaknesses in relation to their career goals. To provide solid direction, mentors need to know what mentees are already able to do and what they need to learn to do. Good mentees are open about sharing their self-evaluation with their mentor so that concrete, short-term, and long-term plans can be devised. Lastly, good mentees actively work at developing and managing the mentoring relationship, or managing up, to use a term from business. The mentoring relationship exists primarily for the benefit of the mentee. One way of ensuring that it stays focused on the mentee's career goals is for the mentor to take ownership of the relationship. The ownership is evident in actions like setting expectations, establishing meeting agendas, being prepared, requesting feedback, and following through on assigned tasks in a timely manner. Agreeing on concrete measures of progress should be a part of the management strategy. A good mentor will be directive when it is needed and allow for greater self-direction as the relationship develops and the mentee grows. Managing up facilitates wise and appropriate use of the mentor's time and fosters a satisfying and productive relationship. That concludes my presentation, and I offer several references for your consideration. And
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, and we're waiting to upload the slide for Dr. Oatis. Yep. Floor is yours, Dr. Oatis.
Good morning. Thank you, Joan. And so what I'm going to do now is to talk about finding that good mentor that Basia described and Joan described. Let's see. This is my disclosure. And as I said, what I'm going to do for the last few minutes is to identify opportunities for people to meet mentors, to find mentors. Recognizing that, for me anyway, most of the things I learned that I need to know, I actually learned in kindergarten. I returned to some important sources from back then to look at the wisdom of those sources. And so with apologies to P.D. Eastman, we're going to use his reference to talk about finding mentors, using it as a reference frame. So the first thing to think about is to be really intentional about finding a mentor. Are you my mentor, so to speak? When I thought about doing this, having this discussion, I actually thought about the mentors that I've had, and I've actually had the wonderful good fortune of having spectacular mentors through my career. But I have to also recognize that it was through absolute great luck that I had these mentors. There was nothing intentional about it. I was just fortunate enough to run into good people. And I realized that we can be intentional, and in fact, we need to be intentional about finding mentors. So really be committed to finding that mentor. Recognize that that mentor or those mentors are out there, and go searching. So what are you searching for? The first thing is, once you've decided that you're going to have a mentor, you have to give yourself permission to actually ask somebody to be a mentor. And we're going to come back to that point in a minute about how to frame it. But as I say, you can be intentional about developing a mentorship relationship. Now, the big thing is, what are you asking for in somebody when you ask that person to be a mentor? And Basia alluded to that earlier. When you're thinking about a mentor, you really need to know what you're asking for. Jennifer Dulski suggested 5 different kinds of mentors, and actually Basia mentioned these and some other individual characteristics as well. So are you looking for somebody who's going to motivate you? None of these are necessarily what you have to look for. It's just, what do you care about? Is it a motivator? Is it somebody who will impart advice? Are you looking for an advisor? Are you actually looking for a listener or a sounding board? Or are you looking for a role model? Or are you looking for somebody who's going to drive you and push you forward? Again, some of these characteristics may be all in the same person. Some of these characteristics may be individual, and you don't necessarily need each of these. The issue is, what are you looking for as a mentor? So then the question is, once you've decided that you know what you are looking for, then what do you do about asking a person to play that role for you? And there actually is some debate in how you do this, and some people suggest that you are quite overt about asking, and other people suggest that you sort of let it evolve. And again, I don't think that there's necessarily a right answer, but I think, as Joan suggested, letting the relationship develop, whether you have overtly used the term mentor or not, is important. This is a job that is likely to be long-lasting, and just as in any marriage, you may meet somebody whom you decide you want to marry right away, but few of us are going to ask somebody to marry us on the first date. So you're going to let the relationship develop. And as Joan also suggested, you need to facilitate the development, that you too play a part in the mentorship relationship, so that as you find somebody who is beginning to serve to meet your need, say as a motivator, you're going to build that relationship, make it a two-way street, so that the relationship can develop. And looking for mentors in all the wrong places. Again, where are we going to find these people? And probably, again, coming back to kindergarten, there's no place like home. Many of our mentors are right around us. They are likely to be in our lives already as friends, maybe even family. They're people you have already seen doing the things you want to do. So they are already serving as a role model. They're teachers that you have had, whether they're your third grade teacher and you look back and think, wow, he really had wisdom. Maybe I should go back and try to pick his brain some more. Or current supervisors, job supervisors, or academic supervisors. Obviously, you can go beyond the home and look at professional organizations. And all of you are members of ARHP, and hopefully you've recognized that there are lots of people within the organization that can serve as mentors whom you might see once a year or even once every couple of years, but every time you get together, you recognize there's something in that relationship you can build on. And finally, there are actually really good sources of mentors in online systems, including LinkedIn. Probably all of you are familiar with LinkedIn. It's really a remarkable source of networking. I have interest in biomechanics, so I participate in a listserv, what used to be called a listserv, but a biomechanics web site where there are lots of opportunities for chatting and networking. So there are certainly lots of remote ways of finding people in areas of interest who could serve as mentors over the long term. Big thing is, mentoring is a big undertaking. As Joan suggested, it may be a lifelong relationship. It is certainly likely to be long-term anyway. So think about who you're going to ask. It's a big job, so you want to ask people who can meet your needs. That is, be available to you in time, in space, and in emotion. You know, maybe I can think of Hillary Clinton. She would be a great mentor, but you know what? She's probably not going to be available to me. So while it's a very exciting thought, I have to be a little bit more realistic. As I said, mentoring is a big job. Make sure that you find somebody with energy as well. Clearly, there's no one size that fits all. A mentor who fits well with me may not fit well with you, but similarly, one mentor is unlikely to be able to meet all of your needs: motivation, advice, listening, and so on. And so I think it's important for us all to recognize that we can have many mentors. Hopefully we do have many mentors. And they will come in all different sizes and shapes. The other thing is that we are going to have different needs for mentors through the various stages. So in graduate life, we need one kind or multiple kinds of mentors, but they will have to serve different needs as we get into early academic life or later in life. And frankly, it's hard to imagine that most of us couldn't use a mentor all the way through our careers and even beyond our careers. That as we enter a new phase of life, there are other people who have gone through that phase already, whom we can seek out as mentors. So the bottom line is, if we're really intentional and we know that there is a mentor or mentors out there for us, hopefully we'll find that person. But even better, hopefully we'll find mentors in different stages of our lives, different needs that all ultimately serve the same role, and that is all of them give us a hand up as we move into a new stage of our careers. So those were the thoughts I had about how we can find the right mentor. I'm going to pass the control back to Linda, and I think we will open up the presentation for questions. So Linda, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Oatis. And I want to take the opportunity to thank all three speakers for the excellent presentation. I would now like to open the floor up, open for questions from the audience. Those of you who have questions, I'd like you to first of all unmute your phone and state your name and pose your question. Will be helpful if you have questions that are directly to any of the speakers, and you can name who would like to address your question first.
Hi, it's Marie. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Marie. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I missed a good portion at the beginning because I didn't have audio. And I'm sorry if you covered this at the beginning and I didn't pick this up. But my question could be to any of the speakers, and that is, what is the appropriateness and the pros and cons of maintaining a mentor-mentee relationship with a previous thesis supervisor or postdoctoral supervisor? Is that recommended, encouraged, discouraged?
This is Carol. Hi, Marie.
Hi, Carol.
I'm going to throw in my 2 cents from a gut level. I think there is no reason to discontinue that relationship if it's a good relationship. There is no political reason, and in fact, if there is a political reason discouraging that kind of relationship, I would question some of the individuals. I think they're the mentors that you have initially who have been good and who continue to serve your needs should continue to be available and should pose no threat to your new relationships. So from my perspective, that's where maybe marriage is very different, that mentors should be continued if they serve your needs.
The other thing I'd add, hi Marie, this is...
Excuse me. Carol, I just wanted to sort of add on that, you know, emotionally and what I totally agree with what you've said, but I have sat on grant review panels for career awards where that is looked at as a negative because of the fact that what they're looking for is, you know, greater diversity, as it were, in your exposure to the scientific enterprise. So I think that, again, it depends on your overall career objective.
And yes, and how you want to use the mentor. Is if the mentor is the only academic mentor and is seen through every stage of your academic career, that makes perfect sense. So it sort of depends on what you're using the mentor for.
Mm-hmm.
This is Basia. Thanks, Marie, for your question. The other thing I would do is, on one of my slides there, I talked about the relationship and whether it be collegial or more of an apprentice. And so depending upon an individual's relationship with their chairman of their chairperson of the supervisory committee, I think that would be something to think about. Is it collegial or is it more of an apprenticeship? And if it's apprenticeship, I think one needs to grow beyond that as one launches their career. So one would hope it would be more collegial. Whether a person can shift, I think that really has to do with those two individuals.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Any other questions from the audience?
This is Deborah Higginbotham. I actually work with Ramona Hilliard at the American College of Rheumatology. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm the HR director, and she was nice enough to let me join in. And so I do have a question. Do any of you have experience with working in an environment where there was a organizationally dictated mentor program? And if so, how much of a role did the administration play in determining how that was structured? And the last part of that question is, in your experience, was it more or less successful than when an individual establishes that relationship?
This is Joan. I don't have any direct experience with that, but the literature would seem to suggest that they're not quite as successful. That there's a borderline there where a designated mentor versus a selected mentor gives you some of the benefits, but not all of the benefits. So the achievements that we've talked about in terms of professional advancement, there is some achievement, but not as great as if you had secured the relationship yourself. The University of Pittsburgh also does have some formalized aspects of a mentor program, but it's not mandatory.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Deborah, I think that's a really great question, and it comes back to the intentionality of finding a mentor, I think. We have mentors for academic promotion and tenure at the university, but I know certainly corporations have mentoring, and while it is unlikely to be as successful as finding the perfect fit, the existence of it, again, at least articulates the value of mentoring. So I think making it an official need of the organization has a significant benefit, even if the match isn't always perfect.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to both of you. That's good feedback.
Any other questions from the audience?
I have a question. I'm not sure if I'm going about this correctly. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually having a little difficult time trying to formulate my question because I feel that in my career I haven't really had very good mentors. And right now where I'm working, I don't feel that I have someone right at my facility, my university, that that I can think of that I would fit a good mentor role for me. So just wondering if anyone has any advice on how to go about finding a mentor that is not at the same place where I'm working, just knowing that developing this relationship takes time, and we don't always have a lot of time away from work.
This is a great question. Any of the panelists?
It is.
Yeah.
I think that's not an uncommon state of affairs. That certainly that rings true to me too, and I think again it's a matter of going outside the institution but staying as close to home as possible, so other institutions nearby, or using the organizations that you go to, the people you see, the literature you read, and the people you meet at meetings, whose articles you've read, and so on. I think you can literally go to individuals and say, I really like what you're doing, and can I talk to you some more about it? And then come back and say, can we talk again? Can I call you in a few months after I've done this much or whatever? And as you build that relationship, I think you can really say, I feel like I need more guidance in my career path. Would you be willing to be available for conversations about it?
I appreciate your question. This is Basia. I would also suggest, I know personally for me, the ARHP has been incredible as far as the amount of mentoring I've received. And I remember, early on in my career of joining planning committees and other kinds of committees through ARHP, and really getting a cross-section of both people new to the field as well as people senior in the field. And it was a great way for us to have a shared task, whether we were planning a program committee, whether we were involved in some research study, but that committee involvement sort of helped neutralize the fact that we all had this shared purpose. And through that I was able to meet more senior people and actually develop mentored relationships through that. So it was sort of a backdoor approach, but it worked for me in developing those relationships slowly before I asked for a more formalized relationship.
Thank you. I definitely should try to get more involved in the ARHP. I've been a member for, probably 6 or so years. And part of why I've been a little bit shy on volunteering for committees is because in my other organization, I volunteered to chair a particular committee and found out I was the only one on the committee. So, and part of the reason that I volunteered, to be on and to chair it is because I thought that would give me the opportunity to be more involved with, other people with similar interests. But, and then I just, I don't recall which one of you talked about this, but I don't feel like I have had good advice, unfortunately, on trying to not say yes to these different service activities, and that has interfered for me with time for other scholarship type of things. So, but not trying to make excuses, but I do recognize that ARHP is probably a wonderful resource.
This is Joan, and I'd also like to respond to that. I have had individuals who have really just called me because they've read something that I've written, and that we've developed a research relationship because of that mutual interest. So I just offer that as it is possible. I think it depends, on the willingness of the person. But, a lot of us, if you're really excited about it, something that an individual has done, that's very reinforcing for the mentor. And I think a lot of times relationships can develop through that.
Thanks. That's so it didn't matter that the person who called you was located far away from you or something like that. That wasn't really a problem.
No, as a matter of fact, in occupational and physical therapy at the present time, we have several career awards, K-12 awards, and some of those individuals are not at our home institutions. And I have ongoing relationships with one individual, mostly for what I would say would be emotional support at a place, because in her own home institution, they're new at the research game, and she gets a grant, for example, and they don't know how to manage it. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't either, because she hasn't had that experience. And then, in another case, it really does relate more to she's writing career awards and grants, and I'm a reviewer on it, so that's more of an instrumental perspective. So I think it can really work for both of the dual purposes of mentoring, for the social, emotional aspects as well as for the more instrumental tasks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for all of your advice.
Thank you. And I am also reminded that at the ARHP annual scientific meeting, the networking forum and the networking at noon is also a great place to network with mentors that potential mentors that you may not have an opportunity to meet otherwise. So I think some of the opportunities will will be available, especially at the scientific meeting. I would like to ask if there are other questions from the audience. And perhaps if none, I would like to pose one of my own. Now, when we're talking about career mentoring, we often focus on work-related issues, but sometimes mentees may need advice around work-life balance, and discussion, it can become personal. So I'm wondering, from the panelists, what is your opinion about setting boundaries in a mentor-mentee relationship?
Well, I think it's a really good question, and I think the need for boundaries, to me anyway, relates to the power difference between the mentor and the mentee. And so I think the more power differential, so if you're the dissertation advisor and the mentee is your student, you have enormous power differentials there. And then I think the boundaries are pretty important to observe so that there can't even be the appearance of impropriety. And I'm not suggesting anything moral or whatever, but the point is the more the power difference, to me, the more the personal struggles or the personal lives need to be separate.
This is Basia. Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I guess where I went when you asked that was that I make it very clear that I am not a counselor to my mentees, you know, when issues of stress or performance anxiety come up, I do like to address it, but I know the boundary of where it's not my role to help them with it, and my role is more to make it okay that they get counseling help and to help them move in that direction. So whether it be performance anxiety, whether it be writing blocks, whether it be family life upheaval and all of it impacting somehow their performance. I think my job, or what I choose to do, is make them feel comfortable of how to seek professional help for that. I also realize that I really need to model balance to them too. And so for them to see me on email 24/7 or for them to see me at work 14-hour days does not demonstrate a good balance. And so I try to demonstrate that by showing how I schedule swimming at lunch so that I can break up my day, and, you know, how I get home for dinner at a reasonable hour. Because I think that role modeling is as important, if not more important, than saying, you know, I think it's really important to have balance in life. So that's somewhat what my response would be then, Linda.
This is very helpful. This is great. And Joan, I wonder if you have any thoughts on this question.
I think my sense, my own personal way of managing it is very much what Basia has articulated, and I think, again, it's a relationship, so it's very much a one-on-one, what happens between, you know, the two individuals. Some people you share more with than others just because of what you're involved in and what happens during the time of that relationship. But I think modeling is a very important aspect of that, and particularly for women, the work-life balance is a real issue.
And I certainly appreciate that that can be quite a bit of a challenge, you know, to with the role modeling, you know, for mentees. I personally do find that a challenge, and you know, that's something that can certainly work on. Back to the audience, are there any further questions for the panelists?
Not from me, thank you.
Okay, that's great. So perhaps I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Belza, Dr. Rogers, and Dr. Oatis again for this excellent webinar for mentoring session. I certainly learned a lot myself, and I'm sure that the audience will feel the same as well. Now, and for the audience, thank you for your participation. Your feedback for this webinar will be very important. It will help ARHP to plan future education activities. And so after this session, you will receive an evaluation form from the ARHP, very likely on Friday. And I would like to encourage you to fill them out and let us know what you think. And I think this will take us to the end of the Mentoring to Success webinar. And again, I thank you for your participation, and hope all of you have a great day.